Think you're good to go. Do I see? Yep, you're on YouTube. Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Open Space Committee meeting for Monday, March 24. This open meeting of the Open Space Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on March 29, 2023. All members of Open Space are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Open Space Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. And good evening to the members. I'm going to quickly call you out and ask for a response to confirm you are here. Leslie Harrison,
Here.
Paul Cacciatore,
Yes.
Anthony Zaitin,
Here.
and Brian Belfer,
Here.
and John Campbell is here. So I can confirm we have a quorum. Also have Northborough staff, Vinnie Vignali.
Here.
Thank you, Vinnie. Thank you for your work putting the agenda together. We'd like to start off with approving the minutes from the prior meeting, which was January 27, 2025. And let's see, in attendance that night was John, Brian, Dan, Ashley, Leslie. So we got three of us that could approve the minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Otherwise,
Yep.
I'm listening for a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
That's awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor, a roll call vote, please. Leslie,
Aye.
Paul?
Was
Get
not
back, you weren't
present.
here. Brian?
Yes.
And John says yes. So the three of us that were here approved the minutes. All good. Thank you very much, guys. Following up on those minutes, and first item on our agenda was just to discuss the Conservation Fund application to the Community Preservation Committee. That was approved to move forward at an amount of $200,000 to be placed in the Conservation Fund to help restore our reserves in that account for open space and conservation purposes. And we are still expecting reimbursement from state DCR with regard to the 432 Whitney property. Latest news I got was that the required due diligence and mapping had been presented, and we were just still waiting patiently for that to come through. I don't know, Vinny, do you have any further news?
Yeah, that is the case. That hasn't moved much. It has gotten approval from the town on the plan for the exemption. And there was some question as to whether it was ever even going to be worked on or was going to be a housing aspect, but they wanted to exempt out that 2-acre parcel just
Right.
to have, and so it doesn't get controlled by the DCR's conservation restriction. So everyone approved it so far, and we're waiting for it. It went back to DCR, and it's in their final process to be finally approved and signed off.
Good news. I'm sure the wheels will still turn slowly, but I trust Lori Connors will be following it up through her contact there, and let's hope so. That would double really the amount of reserves in conservation, which is good. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to dovetail that right into a discussion of the Whitney Street property. And maybe Brian, from a trails perspective or anything, I know we were talking about, when the town might clean it up. I did happen to bicycle by there the other day and I still saw a lot of the pallets and junk, so I don't know if that's yet taken place. Of course, it was winter, but if I could ask Brian, has Trails discussed any kind of preliminary trail run or loop that you might suggest there?
In fact, we have. We actually, a few meetings ago, we sort of let Concom know that we wanted to do some cleanup there. And at that meeting, the topic of discussion sort of became is that we weren't getting guaranteed any trails on that parcel. It was a little bit of a spirited debate, at which point I nominally retracted my free cleanup offer, kind of until Concom said that we could actually put trails there. As much as I'd love to just clean up the property out of the goodness of my heart, it really wants to be cleaned up so that the other folks who are wandering that parcel can not be looking at trash. So following that up, we went back to Concom with a preliminary map proposal. Vinny helped us put together an outline proposed trail, which Concom has since given not formal approval, but given preliminary approval for. And we are now tasked with flagging out said trail so that Vinny and Concom folks can walk it coming up in April. And concurrent to that, we will sort of reignite getting on the cleanup aspect of the parcel.
Yeah, I'm curious, Brian, could you just explain what Brian and Vinny, the process for scoping out a trail? Is it all done like with aerial views of the map first, and then you go out and actually walk it? Or I've always been curious how you approach this.
It totally depends on the parcel you're looking at and what the folks who are walking it are looking for. The Trails Committee took a nice group hike out there. Marielle Stone actually sort of led us on it, and we followed the maps and we followed the property lines and we looked at elevations and kind of, walked. We had a very large GPS track, a very extensive walk we took, which also wandered over to the adjacent DCR parcel and beyond. So basically, it was super exploratory. A little bit of bushwhacking, a little bit of sort of discovery, and it's so a lot of it is done. You look at the map first, then you walk it, then you revisit the map to make sure where you're walking is suitable, so we're not encroaching on wetlands. Then you come up with a sketch, which is kind of what's up on the screen right now. So that's how this one, came out. I'm sure different developments happen in similar ways, but that's what we were doing.
Very cool. Thanks.
Sure.
Just to follow up on that, if I will, there's an area in the north corner here that's the exclusion from the DCR's conservation restrictions. So there's an acre or so pulled out, or 2 acres or so pulled out in that area. But then there's an access road that goes in here and comes across and goes down to the area where all the pallets were. Most of the pallets were down in this area here. And then it was proposed, and the commission was supportive of the idea of a trail going along, as the pink line shows, to come along around the areas here. The area in green are wetlands. So this is wetland, and this is all wetland north of the green line. And then this is a really steep slope. It's tough to see. Yeah. Oh, it's not letting me zoom in. But this is a steep slope around here. So the trail was going to be proposed to go along what's kind of existing stable area along the edge. A lot of fill was brought into this area in the past that was unacceptable. It was kind of mostly just composted material. So they want to really have a reasonable and a good solid trail in there. This is a steep slope going down all the way around, all the way to the wetlands, because this was a fill space for where there was going to be a building site from the railroad. There are 3 small, narrow tributaries of wetland that go down to the pond. It's down in this area here. And so the commission was in support of this. and the idea of having a crossing to get back to the DCR property as well. And so we're now at the point of trying to see if there's anything down along this edge here that was noteworthy, that we would have like a trail that runs down just for access, maybe comes back up, or just you go back up the same trail you went down. But just something to have to kind of minimize the impacts to the wetlands and keep the trails as stable as possible in the future. So I think what we're doing is we're waiting for spring to kind of happen and then get it mapped out a little bit better, or kind of walked out a little better. And then I'm going to go out with Brian and whomever to see what we think.
Very cool. What's the length?
I think it's about a half a mile where's the scale? Did you ever clock that?
Oh, I see the 200 feet. Yeah. So it's pretty short. That's great though.
Yeah, it's not huge, but it does connect into some DCR property.
Yeah.
That
That's wonderful.
has a better potential to go all the way up to, there's a Barefoot Brook Dam. It's out there. There's a potential to go out to the Barefoot Brook Dam, assuming that we're not on 290's property and the slopes are not too steep in the area.
What would it take to develop trails in that DCR property? I assume the state has to bless that.
Yes, I actually have I just got the blessing from the DCR folks to contact their trails person to try to coordinate something to see what can be done. They actually have grant money that could be utilized to do some of that, as well as just giving their permission. They're trying to encourage more trail usage on their property. And this is a flood control area, so it's not really an issue because it's just there. You're not going to be walking out in the woods when it's in the middle of a flood, so it's kind of a safe thing. There'll be an outlet off to, I forget what the street is in Berlin, if we make it all the way through the DCR property.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, Brian, I'm a little curious. You know, the preservation of the land in the first place as open space and the creation of trails on that space in a responsible way, recognition of wetlands and so on, all are in keeping with the goals and mission of the open space category of CPA. You mentioned spirited debate with the Conservation Commission. What were the subject matters or concerns that some of those members had?
There was some initial questioning the need for more trails in town at all. There were certain commissioners who were questioning why we would need trails on this parcel when we have theoretically an adjacent trail on the aqueduct. We had a lot of concerns about wetlands, potential wetlands impact. We had a bit of debate about, I'm trying to phrase this properly, about who is allowed to give the permissions to build trails on the property. And then we had sort of more specific further debate about that little spur trail and the validity of adding that. It was an interesting meeting. I know it's I found it to be strangely I don't know, in a different world, I would imagine that Concom could have said, we'd love to see trails, let's work together to figure out the best path, but that wasn't the reception that I got at the meeting.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know the nature of that either, except that that commission has a serious role in protecting land, and perhaps it was just members exercising that role, expressing a level of concern, perhaps take things cautiously, or can't speak for anybody on the commission, but it may have just been that. But I'm glad that you may have reached some window of compromise, and as you say, preliminary indication this trail path might be okay.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with Brian's summary. It felt like a little more friction than should have been, and I think the commission also had that same feeling that I don't know that they were so much against the idea of a trail. I think they were just didn't want to have a super dense amount of trails, so they wanted to see what was going to be proposed for trails before they said, okay, go ahead. And I think it was a reasonable request to kind of just get an idea. And that's when they went out, the trails folks went out and actually came up with the potential scope, because there was some fear, I know, from the commission of putting a trail right through the wetland. And that's one of their requirements, is that you try to minimize impacts to the wetlands. And so they were hesitant in approving anything until there was some kind of an agreement, some kind of a sketch. And I think they were okay, or they were okay. They actually agreed that this layout was good. I also, at the first meeting, I had incorrect information, so I was giving them the wrong information about hunting. The way I read the town's hunting policy was that it was allowed on properties, but not allowed within 500 feet of a trail. In reality, the policy is that hunting is only allowed at Mount Pisgah greater than 500 feet from the trails. So the way that wording was that deer hunting is the only thing that's allowed, and it's only allowed at Mount Pisgah. So that now that we have this new parcel, the idea that was discussed at the first meeting was that if there was going to be a trail in here, it would preclude any hunting use of the property. But I was incorrect in that, so that's now been corrected. But the Conservation Commission on their agenda for April is going to be talking about land use policy on conservation areas. And they're proposing, and it's going to be in the public notice that'll come out, I think, the end of this week or early next week. They're going to be proposing discussion at that meeting of allowing hunting on all town property in compliance with state regulations, and allowing Class 1 e-bikes on trails within the town. Because currently under state law, Class 1 e-bikes or e-bikes are not allowed on natural trails unless it's specifically allowed within the policy of that municipality that owns or runs the trail. So we had discussion about that at the Conservation Commission meeting, and they seem to be in favor of doing that, but they needed to hold a public hearing, and then that'll be the April 14th meeting. So they're hopefully going to get some feedback and have people give them some input, and then they'll make the decision then or a subsequent meeting.
I have a question regarding wetland flagging. So it says 2010 wetland flagging there.
Yeah,
Is that-
somewhere it does, yes.
So that was the last time that any wetland flagging was done on this property?
That's correct. And that
Okay,
can definitely change.
Understood. Do you think that we would need to do that again when we go through the trail process?
It depends on what we want to do for trails. I mean, if with this
Okay.
layout, I don't know that there would be a need for it, because the only real crossing, what you can see in here, I didn't point it out, but there's a blue line, a thin blue line, and that's the
Yes.
100-foot buffer zone. So that as long as you're far enough away from the wetlands, even if the wetlands are off by 5 or 10 feet, it's not really going to matter that much.
Mhm.
So that I think the commission would be fine to have the wetlands estimate be done by myself and probably Marielle Stone, because she's a DEP person and very familiar with wetlands. These 3 stream channels, I haven't been out there. I've only walked up to about the point at the intersection there, but we would go down and try to find the most narrow crossings and make the trail cross at those locations. So that would be, to map the wetlands would be a cost that I'm not sure the town really needs. And
Okay.
it's up to the commission to make the requirement. But I think they're reasonable and we'll kind of have an idea. They've been out to this site since 2010. I think they've been out to the site about 7 or 8 times. I was going through the files today, and there is a lot of activity out here with violations, enforcement orders, orders of conditions, certificate of compliance, all sorts of things. So it's very well known by a few of the members of the commission.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Some of the things you're bringing up, such as the regulations around bikes, e-bikes, that would end up needing to be part of DCR's conservation restriction as well, right? I think they're ultimately going to hold it. Isn't that still true?
Yes, they're still going to hold the CR, and I think I haven't actually looked at the wording. I should do that. But I believe that the CR allows e-bikes because I think they're generally allowed on DCR property.
Interesting.
Do you know more on that, Brian? You've got more experience with that.
Well, I know DCR has a policy for on land that they own. They're currently doing Class 1 e-bikes on improved surface trails only, but I don't know if that transitions to areas where they just hold the CR, but the land is owned by someone else. I'm not sure if there's any difference in the DCR world. I think I'm certain they can certainly dictate what happens on the parcel that they own, but I think if it comes up in this CR, we would just, look it over and kick it back and tell them that we want to allow it. And if for some reason this parcel, it's not allowed, that's not a big deal. Disappointing, but not a big deal. Not a deal breaker.
Yeah, because we
Well,
haven't
that's
gotten
some-
their draft, the draft narrative of the CR. We got the plan, the property line plan. So that should be coming soon.
We have some CRs on file for other parcels that we've preserved in town. So, I don't know if we're seeking some consistency there or they're more specific to each parcel. And this isn't a very big parcel, so I'm just curious how that process will go down.
Well, I think the way I anticipated is that it depends on what the Conservation Commission decides with their policy relative to all conservation areas. So if it's a conservation area, this policy would apply across the whole town.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, well, thanks. Appreciate those updates on 432 Whitney, and people ask from time to time, so I'm glad to see there's progress both on the conservation side, the trail side, and that we've mapped out the potential area for future housing. And we have some definition to the investment. Speaking of trails, wanted to follow that up with some more carryover with regard to the aqueduct trails and the B-Walt. We brought this up at the last meeting because Don Byrne of Westboro had just recently, or at that time, had appeared before the planning board and the select board. And as I mentioned, I happened to be present at the select board and met him for the first time. And so the guy is naturally optimistic, that's for sure. And he's been at this game a long time. And he seemed to have some optimism around contacts he knew in, with the state water resources people about more permission than we thought with regard to activity on the aqueduct. And I don't know if that discussion has gone any further, but we were going to reach out, try to get connected with Don a little more. I know Ashley said she might try to speak with him. But just something to keep in mind. I mean, I personally, I'm more interested to know, are we going to get progress on the Aqueduct Bridge access, which is an open CPA program. And that obviously a change in accessibility to the aqueduct trails would be interesting, but we all know we can walk them. We're stopped short of putting any kind of improved surface on it. Anyone have any new input or news that they've heard?
I just got a beep, and I'm looking at an email from Ashley. That's a forwarded email from Dawn, and it looks pretty long. So it says Northborough Board of Selectmen are supportive of the idea, and they're looking for a Mass Trails grant next year for the study. And then on the Wachusett Aqueduct, there are concerns. Oh, and then he doesn't follow up on that. He's looking to put together a paper to come up with a feasibility study, funding for a feasibility study of the Aqueduct Trail, kind of targeting the state legislators to encourage MWRA to cooperate and make the trail accessible.
Well, seeing the main motivation is whether we can pursue biking that would connect to the Mass Central Rail Trail. And if I'm not mistaken, using the Aqueduct Trail for the connection from Northborough into Berlin and beyond, it was key to that, right?
For the
And
Aqueduct Trail, yes.
That's sort of where the long-term excitement lays in connection to that rail trail.
Right. So what the final is that we need to do some more work and hoping to organize and lead some walks on the pieces of what might be the Bewalt Trail during this year. And he would appreciate support in organizing the walks in Northborough. So seems like it's really still in a lot deep into the planning section.
Yeah, it's really two subjects. They're related, but it's very different in terms of Northborough's involvement because the path of the Bewalt goes through, the southwest corner of town and somehow has to cross Route 20 where the shopping plaza is, and there's no easy answers there. Whereas the potential expansion of the use of the Aqueduct Trail, holds that potential to connect to the rail trail.
Yes, yeah, and that the Aqueduct Trail runs throughout the town, so that's a north-south connector that would get a lot of use if it were fully finished.
Well, I had suggested the idea that we might invite Don to one of our meetings and kind of get on the same page with what progress he feels he's made at various state levels, and just fine tune our support, and if it leads to the need for more grants or another CPA application, things like that we'd be heading in the right direction. So I think Ashley on our committee knows him best, but we might see if he wants to try to come to our next meeting in a couple of months' time. He's an interesting person to hear about.
I will send an email to Ashley to ask or see if she thinks it would be good to have him attend and invite him.
Yeah, that'd be great. Assuming the timing is good,
Yeah,
be
I'm happy
okay
to
with
reach
that.
out too. I've talked to him a couple of times. It's
That's
always
great.
interesting just to hear what he's working on. So even if we haven't like formalized what our aspect is, he's really good at talking about the larger scope and then sort of helping define what the key like connectors should be. So
Right.
he's a really good resource.
Yeah, he spends a lot of his personal time researching those things and reaching out to contacts. So I think that's really valuable. Well, great. Let's put that as a future potential agenda item for the next meeting, and we'll talk about the date of that at the end of this meeting. Anything else that anyone has on those subjects around the Aqueduct Bridge and trails?
I don't think we have anything new, right? Vinny, we had positive progress, but we're still waiting, right, for the engineers to
Or the Hop Brook or the aqueduct?
the Aqueduct Bridge.
Yeah, I still haven't heard. I sent a question over to them earlier, earlier this month, and I haven't gotten a reply back to do the structural assessment of the bridge itself. They were waiting for the weather to turn, and I think we've got that now. So I'm just trying to get on their calendar to get the work done.
Cool.
Yeah, that's good news. It's been a long time coming. Okay, hearing those subjects, our next agenda item is further discussions of landowner outreach. I think we kind of keep this as a standing agenda item, and once again, Vinny, your organization of that has really been a great asset to the committee that we can continue to follow along the different items and make sure we don't lose track of some and so on and so forth. Any updates to the chart on anything in particular?
No, I think I did an update earlier, just noting, what was the one that we were talking about?
We had some talk about the
15, 16. That's taken off the list. They're looking at putting it on the market.
understood. You had expressed that last meeting, but that the family does intend to, try to sell the house as is, and
Right.
which is good news from a historical perspective and so on.
Right. The only other new thing was, let me pull this up. Oh boy, this will be an interesting one to walk through with you. This is coming up on the screen is a aerial photograph and a lot of line work. It's a section of town down at Route 20, running kind of north-south where my pointer is, and West Main Street coming along here, and you can kind of make out Ward Hill and Shrewsbury. The town line runs down here, I think it is. Yep. So what's being proposed in this area off of Route 20 is where the dam is, the Hop Brook Dam. They're proposing to do some rehabilitation of the dam to kind of bring it back up to its full potential. As part of that, there is a sewer main that runs from Shrewsbury across and into Northborough, and then across Tolman Hill Road. That sewer main goes through the dam, which is not a good situation for a dam owner. You don't like to have a pipe through a dam. And so as part of this rehab work, they're going to relocate the pipe to be moved over into natural ground. So it's not going to be in the actual filled dam part. And as part of that, they have to do a bypass. And so what I received this preliminary drawing, which is, if we got Route 20 there, this red line is the preliminary alignment for an overland bypass pipe. So basically they would have a pipe at the surface of the ground running from West Main Street down to Southwest Cutoff. When I spoke with the consultants and at the Conservation Commission meeting when we talked about this, because they have to get permits for all this work, because all the green is wetlands or are wetlands. And they will need permission from the Conservation Commission. And as part of the discussion, the commission suggested the idea of utilizing this pathway if there's going to have to be some clearing and a path put in place. Maybe we make that a connection to our future kind of long hoped for connection from Davis Street along the top of the dam, and then a connection from here and either over into Shrewsbury this way or up here for a connection to Shrewsbury that way. But if we have something that's going to be in place for however long the bypass is going to be, 6 months maybe, that would be a potential alignment for a new surface trail for a town trail to access and go between Davis Street all the way into Shrewsbury. And so there was some positive discussion there from the commission. They were kind of hoping for that. And the consultants who were doing the design were aware of the situation and didn't kick and scream and say, no, no, no. So I think it's kind of making a little progress. But that's about it. Nothing is official. There's nothing submitted or submitted as a notice of intent, but the idea is out there. And I think in their proposal to the commission, we'll find out more on whether they really do buy into that idea of making it a future trail. But these are some of the properties that are on our list. And I think they were 56 or so, but they're down lower on our list for off of West Main Street and off of Southwest Cutoff.
Right, it's sort of a group of properties there, and
Yes.
Brian brought up talking to Shrewsbury's trail people, right? And so kind of connected to the same subject here.
Yes. Have you talked to anybody over in Shrewsbury, Brian?
I'd sent them a copy of your proposed trail map, which they were super excited to see and to hear about, and they have it, I think, on their agenda for their next meeting to talk more about it, which I might try to go to, but I need to double check the date of that. So yes, they're all on board with it. I'm just sort of still working on connecting all the folks in the right aspects.
Yeah, and that's really where we are now. There's nothing hard agreed upon, and I'm still also trying to connect with the people. I've got a meeting, I think it's April 2nd or April 10th, with the Shrewsbury DPW folks and the Shrewsbury sewer people, and with Scott Charpentier from Northborough, our DPW director, to talk about sewer lines. He is very familiar with sewer lines and what can be done, how this can be done, and how we can all work together to kind of all win on some project that really needs to get done. But it's still just discussions.
Interesting though. It's you drive by it all the time, and I've never walked it, and I know it's is it 8 or 10 years back now that we got the CPA grant for what was going to be a trailhead there off of Davis. And
yes. Yes, so that money was set aside for the trails folks, and I think we're hoping as part of this construction work on the dam itself that they're going to use that area up top there as a staging area in the beginning of the project. And then there's going to be another one off Route 20. And I've asked them to leave them as parking areas for like 6 or 8 cars at each location, so we could have a parking area. And once the contractors are done, it's pretty simple to mark it off and get it set up. The access is nice and it's easy to work with. I think Trails would be jumping on that.
very good.
All right. There's no other questions. I'll close the sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, though. That's interesting. Any other news or comments anyone has on other open parcels? Any discussions? Anything at all? Okay, hearing none. Not a lot of other stuff to talk about, but I did want to bring up, at our last meeting, we asked if someone would represent us at the master plan committee, and Leslie volunteered. And Leslie, thank you. And you've gotten kind of immediately involved in our most current initiative there. Could you spend just a minute and tell the committee and anyone listening what we're trying to promote?
We're promoting the Blake Street improvement, exactly what it's called. But so there's a flyer that Laurie Connors had released, and we're trying to get it out on, posted it on my personal page and just a few community pages that I'm in. Got some feedback. There hasn't been as much hubbub as I had expected, but some good feedback and some positive, which is nice. So just encouraging people to come to town meeting in a month and come and have your voice heard.
It's Article 29, is that right? I believe.
I don't know to look at. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the warrant.
So the master plan implementation committee is trying to get behind this to make it more known in town and generate some interest in getting it approved at town meeting, which may be a challenge. At the moment, there's not enough free cash for all of the capital improvement projects that the town is bringing to town meeting. There are many other capital equipment and trucks and so on that tend to come up at every town meeting, of course, and because of other situations in the overall financial planning plan, the approval of the budget for the Blake Street streetscape revival, as we're calling it, would require some borrowing for a portion of it, even though we're hoping to get grants to cover about half of it. But that borrowing requires voters to approve it. It requires a 2/3 majority vote. The potential impact on the average home is projected to be about $17 a year over a 10-year period. Not a lot of money, but in the context of other things and taxes going up for the fire station, it's something that was going to require a good presentation and thought and some campaigning. So just wanted to talk about it briefly, just so you committee members know. I'm also going to help Laurie Connors in a presentation that's going to be on the cable channel. She and I are working on that at the end of this week. And then we're just thinking about other things we can do to get the word out. But what Leslie's done is helpful, getting it onto, Facebook pages for Northborough. But any other suggestions people have and any ability to email around, just get people talking about it. It's a really good idea, and it's really the first tangible project that can improve the look of downtown, and not just the look of it, but the ultimate goal being make it a space where people want to come and park and walk and collaborate, and also enhance the economy. As you continue to enhance downtown, you encourage businesses to do the same. And with the big 4 West Main Street building essentially unoccupied, with the potential to get more retail business in it, and other businesses in that zone very interested in this idea. We're talking about what is really just a blank parking lot and turning it into sort of a community space. So it's a really good project. I think a lot of people in town want to see it done. They may just be cautious about what's happening, when's it going to happen, what's it going to cost, and then how might that lead to future steps? I think that's what we're trying to promote.
And yet one other thing I want to add is financial planning is not behind it and appropriations are not, so that makes it a more of a challenge at town meeting when you don't have the backing of those two organizations.
Correct, and I've been present at the meetings where they've discussed it, and quite frankly, those two committees are doing their job, playing their role of looking at the overall expenditures at this town meeting and how they affect to the long-range financial plan and what's coming in the future for the major capital projects such as schools and so on that are already kind of in the queue. So while I wish they looked at the big picture a little bit more in terms of downtown enhancement, which many people spoken out in favor of and is part of our master plan, I do respect that in terms of this year's town meeting and things being tight, they're making their opinion known, but doesn't mean we still can't promote it and get people to look at the benefits of it and then make their own decision.
I think another aspect, John, was also that we're approaching a Prop 2.5 override, which is again another consideration.
Yeah, not this year, but the potential is there that it would come up in future year or a year or two out because of the other things in the plan. It's kind of, unless you're a finance major, your head spins a little bit looking at the charts and numbers, but
Yep.
I see what they're talking about. So even though this amount, I think it's going to ask for around 900,000 in borrowing, a relatively low amount compared to bigger projects, it still impacts the overall town's position in borrowing and debt. And like I say, it requires a 2/3 majority. That town meeting is, I believe, that's correct. So anyway, there's a little bit of promotion. I just wanted to put the word out there, kind of related to this committee and our enhancement of spaces in town. But we don't exactly have 900,000 in the bank, so we need people to get behind it. There is, by the way, on the town website in planning, there's a specific web page on this, and I can easily email around the flyer. Maybe Leslie could do that for us. And if you hadn't heard about this, I wanted you to hear more about it.
Yeah, I made
Any
the
other-
from
Go
PDF
ahead.
into JPEG because you need that for social media. So I'll send those right now in response to the meeting invite.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Very good. The last little order of business is figuring out when our next meeting would be. The fourth Monday in May, which would traditionally be the day, is Memorial Day. So not going to work to have a town meeting on that day. I personally, let's see, the following Monday, I'm sorry, is June 2nd. Just happens to be the first Monday of that month. Does that have the potential to be okay? Vinny, do you know from your own town staff obligations?
On the town's calendar, and they have not filled in the meetings calendar, so I don't know if the select board is meeting or are there any other conflicts, but right now it looks open. June 2nd.
We have limited members present, but would it be open for the members here?
Nope.
At this point,
TBD.
Yeah, you're right. I get it, Paul.
I hope I'm not available. No offense, because that would mean we're in the finals. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that's fine. You'll be given an out.
yeah, thank you.
By the way, our select board liaison was Lisa Maselli, and I know that she has an interest in this committee. She has attended some meetings, but often we conflict. And now she's announced that she's resigning and not running again. So at some point we'll get a different liaison, but no disrespect, because the select board people are busy. It's hard to make all the meetings and all the liaison commitments. And we haven't traditionally had that much participation from a select board member because it is so hard just to make so many meetings. So, well, that said, then let's leave this meeting by proposing that we'll have our next meeting on June 2nd, 7 p.m. And we'll assume it'll still be a Zoom, and we'll go from there. And then in the meantime, if there is discussion with Don Byrne, Brian, you may feel it's just as appropriate that he, attend a trails meeting, and that would be fine. And I would definitely come to that, or just, interested to hear his feedback. I'm sure
Sure.
he'd love to know that we're involved. We want to be involved with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw both dates at him. I think we have trails June. I just closed my calendar. June 19th. No, May. Sorry. I don't know. Yes, I will invite him to trails, and I'll
Trails is
email
always
out.
third Monday, right?
Yeah.
So you'd be May 19th, and you'd be June 16th, and so on.
Yeah. And then before we close, just on other semi-relevant stuff, there's a grand opening celebration event for the ADA path on Tuesday, April 1st at the Senior Center.
Awesome.
There's some emails going around. There's some stuff on social media, but I'm not sure if they're doing formal invitations. But
That's a Tuesday, and is it in the afternoon or morning, or what was it?
Tuesday the 1st at 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. with a rain
Nice.
date of the 8th.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. So I'll just repeat it for the audience. The Senior Center Loop Trail grand opening this April 1st, Tuesday night, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. weather permitting.
Is it an
Great
April Fool's-
accomplishment.
Is it an April Fool's joke, or is it really happening?
Well, trail's already there.
You're gonna have to show up to find out. Very good. Any other business to talk about? Anyone? Hearing none, it is 7:54. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Leslie.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to adjourn. Leslie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Anthony,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and John, yes. We are adjourned. Thank you for your time again tonight. Good meeting.
Thanks,
night,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you June
Thank you.
2nd.
Thanks.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Vinny, for your help as always.